Morning. Thank you for coming back. Word traveled fast how I killed at Beacon Evangelical, I guess, and packed them in here again. All right. Thank you in the front row. Many of you expressed to me how you enjoyed the humor of my last message, so there will be more of that. It's been board approved. However, there is now a 2-drink minimum for all of my services. Iris and Judy will be around to take your orders. Try the tofu veal. It's fabulous. So last time we talked about Shakespeare's words being applied to modern day experiences. If you missed it, Richard put it on YouTube. Oh, that reminds me. I watched the YouTube video. Did anybody watch it? As Richard put it, I had more chins than a Chinese phone book. So I need, Cynthia, you're up. You're on chin patrol. Anytime you see more than one, give me like a signal. We got to get a much better camera angle for this. You'll watch it now and laugh, but it's sad but true. Okay. So what I wanted to explore today is how our modern, am I good? Okay. Yeah. Modern experiences can be applied to Shakespeare's words. You see, because we have a problem in our culture, I feel, with all these modern conveniences we have, we're really losing our language. We've let our need for convenience shorten our language. We have let our need for I already said that, can shorten our language. Our beautiful language, we've shortened it to things like LOL, OMG. We really like our abbreviations here, don't we, as well? UUCSJS, LGBTQRST, SJAA. Right. So I got to thinking, what if Shakespeare were here? Would he be a texter? Would he succumb to this perilous temptation? I hope not. But I came up with some popular acronyms that the youngins use while they're texting, so you may or may not know some of these, but these are real. One is YTTM. Anne probably knows this one. You talk too much. YTTM. I think if Shakespeare were texting that, thumbs a-blazing, he would say tu wasta tu siv, which means where words are scarce, they are seldom spent in vain. Another popular one is YY for you, which means too wise for you. Shakespeare would have said WMA2LOWC. No, he wouldn't have. That's the next one. Shakespeare would have said, I would challenge you to a battle of wits, but I see you are unarmed. That's my favorite Shakespeare ever. That's not my favorite. Actually, my favorite one is Taming of the Shrew, where Beatrice says, I would rather hear my dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me. All right, settle down. So another one is LOL. We know that there's also LOLA, which is laugh out loud again. Shakespeare would have said that WMA2LOWC, which means with mirth and laughter, let old wrinkles come. LGMAS, Lord, give me a sign. As Hamlet says to Horatio, there is special providence in the fall of a sparrow. Many of you gentlemen probably experienced this phrase in your youth and adolescence, LYLAB, love you like a brother. Shakespeare says, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Big difference, right, between Shakespeare and how we communicate today. Of course, they didn't talk that way back in Shakespeare's time either. We know it's poetry. But I can tell you that the balcony scene would have been very different if T-Mobile were involved. I took the liberty. Romeo, 2G, 2B, 4G, 2G, 2BT, 1432, 1432, 2-night, 4COL. Juliet, 9, Acorn. Romeo, WUWHIMA, Juliet, What's up? I did find one instance, however, where Shakespeare's text abbreviation would have actually been shorter than the ones that we use today. There is a phrase that the kiddies use called JTOL. That's just thinking out loud. Shakespeare would have just said S for soliloquy. So our first speech of the day, our resident Hamlet, Jack Miller, will make his triumphant return, and he will read for us a modern-day interpretation of the to be or not to be speech, which, believe it or not, was written by Prince Charles, the Prince Charles, to talk about what I was just telling you about and how he feels that the language is being lost. So take it away, Hamlet.
This will make it much easier not to forget this time. May I go backwards? And from the last time I was supposed to do it, there was, who would fardels bear to sweat and groan under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, that undiscovered land from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will. Little better than this. Well, frankly, the problem as I see it at this moment in time is whether I should just lie down under all this hassle and let them walk all over me, or whether I should just say, okay, I get the message, and do myself in. I mean, let's face it, I'm in a no-win situation, and quite honestly, I'm so stuffed up to here with the whole stupid mess that I can tell you I've got just a good mind to take the easy way out. That's the bottom line. The only problem is, what happens if I find when I've bumped myself off there's some kind of, all that mystical stuff about when you die, you might find you're still, know what I mean?
Okay, that was good. Thank you, Jack. Now we are going to look at our first principle of the day, which is the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. And to do that, we're going to take a look at a very famous speech. Some of you may have had to actually memorize it yourself back in high school for some half-baked assignment in history or Latin. I don't know if you did or not. I did. It was for Father James Lacrosse, freshman world history at St. Peter's Chanel. Incidentally, through this painstaking research that I'm doing for these services, I came across an interesting theory about, did a lot of people have Julius Caesar in high school or no? Yeah, okay. Actually, one of the theories why that is taught so often is it's very short, but two, the main reason is there is no sex in it. There's no cross-dressing, there's no double entendres, there's no anything like that. So there's no reason for boys to giggle in the back of the room a la Beavis and Butthead and teachers like that. So that's why that has been always brought to the school system. This principle actually I see as being very challenging for a congregation like ours, as many of us are pacifists and on peacekeeping missions. And we've all been under the strain of being at war for many years now. Julius Caesar, and particularly the plight of the Spartan Brutus in the play, who against his own conscience participates in the assassination of Caesar for what he believes is the good of Rome. So I ask you, what are you willing to do for democracy? What will your conscience allow you to do for democracy? How far would you go? Brutus has a famous line that says, "If then that friend demands to know why I rose up against Caesar, this is my answer. It's not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more." These questions we ask ourselves all the times in regard to events abroad, but what about our own congregation, as the principle says? The democratic process allows for many a heated debate around here. What do you do when these personality clashes or artistic differences surface? Do you talk it out, or do you just quit the committee? Are you using your right to a voice to say that you don't like something about someone or something? Or do you just stop coming to the services? Let's take a look at this scene. It's Act 3, Scene 2, where we find the democratic process at work as Mark Anthony tries to turn the crowd on Caesar's assassins. Actually, our actor, Betsy Seawright, sets a shining example of how the democratic process works at UUCSJS. She was quick and democratically good to point out that in line 88, the words "he hath" should be changed to the word "Caesar" for clarification. Leave it to a UU to rewrite Shakespeare. Huzzah!
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred in their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men, come I to speak at Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Caesar brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was an ambitious, and sure he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in that coffin there with Caesar. I must pause till it come back to me.
Thank you. Yes, take a bow. Take your moment. Good for you. You know, it's funny. We're studying a little bit in our ladies group on Monday about staying in the flow. And, you know, some days you just hit all the green lights. And finding some very interesting things as I work on this project. And I approached Betsy about doing that. And then she shared with me an interesting story about her family. And obviously what a great mother she is, because she's been guilting herself for years for taking her son to see Animal House. And then he enjoyed Greek life to the fullest. She's always felt bad about that, and she told me that, and then I got her in a toga, so it's all come around full circle. Guilt, the gift that keeps on giving, right, Betsy? Good for you. Okay. All right, so finally today, we're going to take a look at the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. I will be doing the first speech from Richard III. It's the first few lines, so you don't need to know too many plot points, but I would like to point out a few things contained in this speech. Actually, the first line is often misinterpreted. The line, is now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York. And it's written S-O-N, and a lot of people misinterpret that thinking that Richard's talking about himself, but he's actually talking about the sun that's on the King Edward's coat of arms. So it's a play on words. It's S-U-N and S-O-N. Also, one of the last lines is Richard says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. And G actually refers to the prophecy of who is going to kill King Edward, and it's George. But there is no George. George is actually Clarence. Clarence is named George. He goes by Clarence. This is all in the first speech, so I understand when you just give up and put on the Real Housewives. I understand, but just try to stick with it a little bit. So these things that don't really have anything to do with our principal, I just figured if you're at a cocktail party, you'd look smart knowing these things. Of course, if this comes up at a cocktail party, you are at a very weird cocktail party. And as I look around, there's a very good chance of that happening. So, I always thought that would be a great motto for our religion: Unitarian Universalism, where you'll never be the weirdest one. I think that sums it up, I think. All right. So we're going to take a look at Richard III. We back? We're okay? Okay. All right. Barbara has graciously agreed to play me off while I can get into costume and get into Richard III, so.
Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up in monument, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim, visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front. And now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasings of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am so rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton, ambling nymph. I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs barking as I hop by them. Why, I, in this weak, piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to spy my own shadow in the sun and descant at mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these farewell-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous by drunken prophecy, libels and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate the one against the other. And if Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day should Clarence closely be viewed up about a prophecy that says the G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Dive thoughts down in my soul. Here Clarence comes. Brother! Good day! What means this armored guard that waits upon your graves? The horse, the horse. Come. A horse, the kingdom for my horse. All right. So here, very clearly, we see what happens when everybody doesn't get invited to the party. Houses will be torn apart. Kingdoms will fall. All because poor little Richie didn't get the homecoming that all the other soldiers got. And we know this. And yet it's 2012. We're still letting elections be decided based on who the candidates think can and cannot get married. I don't know if you saw it, but just last month, members of the Golnier Free Will Baptist Church in Kentucky voted to prevent interracial couples from becoming members or taking part in services at all, except for funerals. I don't know. You can still go to the funeral. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think it is important to point out the ridiculousness of this from time to time. That every time we deny someone something that they want, we create a little golem. And if Lord of the Rings has taught us anything, that's not good. Why, even in our own congregation, little Miss Marcia Hannah wanted to be an architect when she was a girl. Her mother told her that girls can't be architects. We could have this building designed for free. See that? I say we bill the Utz estate for their crimes against Marcia. You know what? To close up, I do have to pull out my magic book again. Remember the stories that I told you last time when I was reading it. So this time, let me take you to Caesar's Palace, where I was playing poker and getting into my deep, dark part of Richard III and scribbling away. And a man sitting next to me from Nigeria with a sort of tribal medallion on, very Nigerian. He looked at me and he said, "Oh, you are like me. You like to read." I said, yes, I'm actually doing a service for church on Richard III, and I'm in my very dark place. And he says to me, "Have you ever read The Power of Positive Thinking?" And I said, no, but I've heard of it. I've been meaning to get to that. It changed my whole life. My ex-girlfriend gave this medallion to me. It means Nigerian tribe, but I don't want to know what it means because it just means special for me. I read this book, changed my whole life turned around. I said, well, that's great. Thank you for advice. It's really nice to meet you. My name's Michelle, and what's your name? And he says, Richard. You cannot make this stuff up, people. He said his name was Richard. Meanwhile, now 3 hands later, Richard lost all his money to a smelly homeless man who drew to an inside straight when Richard had 3 nines. And I thought to myself, where's your Celestine prophecy now, big guy? Not buying that signed first edition of The Secret on eBay now because the guy in the flannel shirt has all your money.
It's strange but true. It happens. So I guess I wish until I see you all back here on February 19th that you also run into people who pull you out of your dark places. And I guess just to keep a running theme, I'm in the car with Teresa, and Anne is yelling at me for something, and I looked at Teresa, and I decided not to yell back, and I simply said, Anne, that sounds very frustrating, and I hear you. And Teresa was ecstatic. She was applauding. If she could have stood up in the car, she would have. And unfortunately, I had to break the news to Teresa. I was just saying that to bug her. But I'm getting there. And also, Marcia and I were driving in the car, and we were cut off at very close to that same intersection, and we did say bless him. Did we not? Yes. So I said bless him in the car with Anne. She's not quite there yet either. Anne's response was, he's blessed that I don't stop this car and kick him in the... But we're working on it, okay? So we're still continuing to work. I hope to see everyone back here on the 19th. Thank you for listening.
Huzzah to the bard in the house. Please rise now, embody your spirit, and sing, "The pen is greater than the sword."
320